Motherhood, but not quite as we imagine. Thought-provoking, refreshing, straightforward, sometimes taboo, often seemingly ordinary, but always honest. Welcome to School for Mothers, opening conversations we all need to have, exploring ways in which you can be fulfilled as a woman, once a mother. Now, here is your host, mother of 10, Danusha Melina Durban.
Hello and welcome back to the School for Mothers podcast. I'm Danusha Melina Durban, your host. Let's dive into today's episode.
So my domestic arrangement is probably most complicated, probably of all the guests. So my 15-year-old is very lucky to have 4 parent figures. As you can tell, he must be ecstatic about that. So I divorced my ex-husband about 7 or 8 years ago. And then I was a single mum for about 4 or 5 years. And then actually this August, I remarried. So I live with my new husband, with my 15-year-old son and my almost 11-year-old daughter. And they share their time between my house and my ex-husband's house. And he also has a fiance who's quite actively involved in their lives. My son also has special educational needs, which means he has ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia. In fact, this year he decided to go on medication himself. He made an active medical decision himself to go on medication. But it does mean that there's a lot of discussions with schools and activities in terms of, helping him with his behavior and choices that he makes as a consequence of his needs. And yeah, that's really my situation. I'm sure we'll get into more detail as we go on.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And you just said you have a new husband, yeah?
I do.
Great. Good. Thank you. Evelini.
Hi, everyone. My name is Evelini Quarrell. I'm the founder of the Foreign Mom podcast. So I'm from Brazil and living in England now for over 11 years. So today is actually my wedding anniversary. I made this window at my wedding anniversary to come and celebrate here with you 3, and everybody else. Basically, I live with my husband and our 5-year-old boy and our 2-year-old girl. And we share the chores, but I'm going to wait for Danusha to ask everything that she'd like us to share with you a lot. So, yeah, but it's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. Thanks. Joy.
Hi there. So I'm Joy Foster, founder of Pixies. I am a mother of 2. I'm American, as you can tell from my accent, but I'm married to a Brit and we live in Oxford. We also have a cat. Although I'm allergic to cats, we have a very cute one that is hypoallergenic. I always like to throw that in because sometimes people didn't know there was a hypoallergenic cat out there. But I'm I have to live in this cross-cultural marriage. We say England and America are 2 countries divided by a common language, but it's not so common, and it has caused lots of problems in our communication style. But it's wonderful to be here.
Oh, fantastic. My gosh, we've got a hell of a lot to dive into, don't we? So before we do, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm Danusha. I am a single mother. I have 10 children, of which 6 are regularly home or are here, and 4 are flown and grown, or grown and flown, whichever. But they keep coming back. I mean, they keep changing their situations, and then they always return. So it's often 6, 8. It has been 10, but at the moment, thank God it's not. And also they're not all in the UK now. I have 1 in Spain and 1 in New York, 1 in Madrid and 1 in New York. So they can't come home. So, so I also have a dog, Dickie the Dachshund, who quite often makes an appearance on lives. But I don't know where he is. He's very demanding dachshund, and he thinks he's a baby. And I run a consultancy that shapes boards and offers leadership development. So that is my career. And then I'm podcast host of 2 2 podcasts, and I have a 7-year-old. One of my triplets has her own podcast. And quite frankly, I'm looking at her stats today, and they're giant. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you're going to outstrip mama, which is absolutely brilliant. So we've got a very, very, very busy home with all sorts of ages in it. And two of my children are special needs too. So yeah, we have a myriad of requirements around us. So, okay, the beauty of it is that we have so much covered here. We have lots of difference among us, as well as similarities, I would imagine. And I'm curious to know from you, and I don't mind who answers first, actually, but I'm curious to know how you are with before you ever get to tasks, the emotional load of thinking about them. Yeah, so in your house, who does the planning? Who does the thinking? And I know that that's not a clear cut question because there's so much to think about in the house. But can you answer, could you say something to that? Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first on that one. So I think just in terms of the thinking, it kind of depends on what we're talking about. So we've divided a lot of the tasks in our house up. So, for example, cooking and laundry and play dates and birthday parties. So, you kind of, if you list out everything, then the approach we've taken in the house is really someone's going to own the whole thing. So my husband, really, he owns the food. So he does all the shopping. He does all the cooking. Now, I will a couple days a week try and, cook something. But really, and I kind of do it on the weekends. So we have a little bit of a role reversal in our house. But, in terms of, play dates, that's 100% me. Birthday parties, that's 100% me. And, so we've got to a place where it's like someone fully owns it. And I think that makes a big difference. And then we communicate if and I know my husband got to a point where he was like, I'm doing the laundry all the time. I'm doing the cooking all the time. You need to help out a little bit. And so laundry was one of the first things I could kind of take back from him that was easy. So, just getting into the habit of putting the laundry on and hanging the laundry up and just every day running loads all the time so that we're just, not all the time, but every day running loads so that there's never a pile up. But really for us in our house, it's about, okay, what is the thing that needs to be done and who fully owns it? And, mortgage, I fully own. Finances, I fully own, and he like the car, he fully owns. So that's made a big difference for us.
I really love the way that you're saying about the clarity of who owns what, as opposed to the kind of all these jobs need doing, but they're kind of invisible. We're not too sure if we haven't discussed every job, then someone just kind of has to pick them up in a bit of chaos. And a lot of us, I would imagine, try that and it goes completely. I mean, did you try that before, Joy?
Well, I mean, I think because we weren't talking about it, that's when all the problems came, because there was this kind of expectation that I would do play dates and I would do birthday parties and this expectation. And I got tired of doing it, just like he got tired of cooking and he got tired of doing the laundry. So it's been interesting that actually what's helped us is talking about it, just verbalizing it, and just saying, okay, what are the tasks? And I read the book Fair Play by Eve Rodsky, and I know she's coming on to be a guest of yours. That's a podcast everyone should listen to because she really understands this concept of you got to talk about it and you got to, and also one of the things that we learned was we value things differently. So we did the book, we played the card game, and we realized that, I don't really value laundry and cooking. He values laundry and cooking. So the thing that you value is the thing that you take full ownership for. I value birthday parties. I value play dates. So yeah, I'm in charge of those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's, and also, I mean, I will say, if you go back, way back to when my kids were like Evelini's kids' age, my kids are 9 and 10 now, but when they were 2 and 3, that was really hard because my husband at the time was working, he was traveling abroad all the time and everything was on me. And that was very, very, very hard. And I remember doing the laundry, and I remember doing the cooking, and I remember not having someone there. He was gone the first 2 years of their life. He was gone a full year. And I just remember, like, I don't know, Danusha, I have no idea how you do it. I really, really struggled. My entire church had to come and take care of me half the time because it was just so much work for me. And I only had two. But I think what was interesting was when he stopped working and he was home a lot more because he decided that job wasn't a good fit for him and our family. All of a sudden it was like, okay, well, you're home, you got to help. And then there was a lot of contention around that period of time. But to his credit, he stepped up big time. And then he ended up taking over stuff so that I could build my business. And then actually the roles reversed, and then it became the opposite, where he had to come to me and say, no, you've got to step up now. So I think communication is a big piece.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Got you. So we're gonna come back to the ownership and the dividing it up in a sec. Evelini, what about you?
So basically, my husband has always been very good at taking initiative and doing things, right? So at the beginning of our relationship, we were both working full time, in our jobs. And then after I had the children, I decided to stay at home. And now I've got my podcast. So because I've had more time at home, I decided that I could do more things for him. But obviously, he's always seen my situation. So for instance, if after we put the children to bed, he saw that I was completely worn out, he didn't even go and say, oh, go to bed or stuff, I think I would automatically come to bed, and then he would simply go and automatically take the laundry out of the wash machine, take the dishes out. So we never really argued. And for instance, with regards to the general cleaning of the house, I hate my house smelly or dirty. So in order not to be feeling overwhelmed that I need to do everything myself, and for him not to feel he needs to do it himself, so we pay for a cleaner. So every Friday we have a cleaner. And this way we prevent arguments, So it's like the best money we invest. So this way we don't feel, I'm cleaning more bathrooms than you are and stuff like this. So that's one less thing that we need to worry about and to argue about. And with regards to social, because our children are still quite young, we're still both quite happy to go together to take them to play dates and birthday parties, things like this on the weekend. Having said that, for instance, on Saturday mornings, he's taking ownership to take the children to football. So it's his thing. So it's actually not even my daughter's football. It's 10 to 11, and my son's is not until 12 to 1. So he goes, takes her, and then brings her back, and then he goes and takes him and brings them back. But it's almost like the children's choice as well. It's like my bit with daddy by myself. So it's almost like they chose him, and I'm happy with that, because it's that precious time with their daddy. And after lockdown, he's been doing more cooking. He's become like an amazing pizza chef. So we haven't ordered pizza for quite some time now because he now makes an amazing pizza. He's English as well, by the way. So this way we are, English Brazilian family. So, but I think it's about initiative. And if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I talk to him, and he never really has anything to complain or to think that I'm doing less or more or that I haven't done. So I think it's more about initiative rather than ownership that we deal with it here. Like what needs doing, I see it, it needs doing, I'll go ahead and I'll do it. Rather than like, right, you do dishes or you do laundry. And this way, so far, it's been 6 years today. It's working.
Yeah, exactly. So in your case, you have less of that clarity, like division of ownership, as Joy has just said. That's interesting. That's really good. And that's the important thing, isn't it? That it is what works for you. In your personalities, he sounds like he has a huge amount of initiative, and you also sound like you have because you're now at home more. It sounds like you actually want to take more on. Or you kind of
That's it.
naturally, so it works well. Whereas if you weren't like that, perhaps it would be different. So the dynamic is working.
Absolutely. And before this conversation, I told him about this and he was like, uh-oh. And I was like, it's all good. Don't worry. I'm not going to be slagging you off. And and I talked to him about it exactly that, once I get, the busier I get, do we need to do, what else can we do to help each other not to feel overwhelmed? And I'm sure we'll find a solution because it's never been a problem. And he's actually a very good feminist because he actually wants to do things to prove, particularly to our son, that daddy can do it. Daddy is helping mommy. One time I was driving and my son was like, Mommy, why isn't daddy driving? And he looked at my son and he goes, because mommy drives better than daddy. So he's quite feminist in this matter, that he wants to show to our children that, it's both job. It's not mommy's job, and I'm very pleased with it.
Yeah. And we'll come back to the whole idea of helping in a minute. Maybe Rebekah will speak to it actually.
So I think for me, I've had kind of 3 stages, as you're kind of aware, Danusha. So in my first marriage, I was definitely default parent. I was Miss Perfectionist, corporate career, doing absolutely everything at home, quite exhausted in the process, and wondering why my career wasn't progressing as fast as I wanted it to. Because obviously I was very busy being perfect for everybody apart from myself. And then when I became a single mom, my son was 7 and my daughter was 3. And, I quickly realized I just couldn't do as much as I was doing before. And even at that young age, I started getting them to do things around the house. And even now, my 15-year-old, and even my 10-and-a-half-year-old, they are responsible for their rooms. So I do not do anything in their rooms. I mean, God, if you open my son's cupboard, it's like a horror movie, but it's in a cupboard. And if he wants to wear wrinkly, disgusting clothes, that's entirely his choice. It's not my responsibility. So basically they're responsible for their own rooms, mopping the floor, hoovering, dusting, everything is they're changing their bed sheets, putting new bed sheets on, everything in their bedroom is their own responsibility. And so when I, discovered my new partner and now my husband, he came into, a family where I had already decided how things were going to be in my next relationship. Yeah. And we already had, structures in place by which the kids were already actively doing quite a lot around the house. So, when he came in, he doesn't have kids of his own. He, was a 40-year-old man entering a house, with a lot of, organization and structure already. You have to do that as a single parent to survive, basically. And I was really clear to him from the start. There is no concept of helping in our house in terms of that, in terms of, helping, this kind of concept of, oh, my husband helped me. Not in the way that Evelina is talking, but it's, I see it a lot in, quite a few of my friends and also, at work, I see a lot of people saying, oh, I'm so grateful that my husband did that for me. Or, he helped me do that. Oh, it's so nice you're helping with the kids. It's like, no, that has just got to go away. 2 people, made the children. 2 people, I mean, if you are in a 2-person, couple, then you all have to be responsible for the child. And I love, how Joy was talking about having conversations. We basically have this concept of frank conversations where you can say anything you like during that, frank conversation. And it's not, you don't talk about it afterwards in terms of, oh, you brought up that issue. It's like that's our opportunity to have that frank conversation and it not be talked about a week later. Because I still don't get it right, because I'm so hyper aware of the inequality that existed in my first relationship, that I really want things to be so equal that sometimes I don't get it right. In fact, when I was talking to him about coming, on this event today, he was saying, sometimes you do make me feel like I'm helping you. And I was like, what do you mean? It's, everything's very clear. And he was like, well, sometimes I'll get up early with the kids, get their breakfast, and you'll walk in and you'll take over. And that makes me feel like I was just helping you for a bit. And I was just like, whoa, okay, so I am basically, sometimes I am still disenfranchising you in a way that I'm not setting myself out as somebody who should be doing that. I'm looking for real equality, but yet I am still falling back into these behaviors which disenfranchise you. So, definitely, I'm striving for equality, but I'm still not getting it right because of these societal patterns, previous relationships. And I'm glad that, he was able to say to me, actually, stop it disempowering me.
It's such an important point, isn't it? That it's so common for women to be saying, I have to do everything. I'm so fed up with this. Nobody else helps me. Why am I lumbered? I'm burdened. I can't do my job, blah, blah, blah. We know the sentences. And then they say, oh, but they don't do it as well as me. Like the cooking's not as good, the dishwasher isn't done well, the laundry's not as good, doesn't really know how to put the children to bed quite like I do, so I do it. So all this kind of nuanced, it can be very direct, actually, this disempowering, or it can be just very subtle ways of stopping others from not helping, but contributing. So I like to see this as a system. The house is a system. The love in it isn't. That's not a system. That's the love. That's the home. But the house itself is full of all of these chores, these tasks to make it smooth and happy and run. It needs, the food needs to be bought, and all of those things, like those beds that need changing, and the garden, and all of these. It's not just actually in the home. It's everything that goes with the home, the car, the finances. That we've talked about, and it's not really to do with the relationships. It's just if we're not careful, if we don't get the system sorted, then the relationships falter, and I don't want that. So I treat it like it's something for us to contribute to, which is really interesting when you talk, Evelini, about earlier before we came on about the children, because you've got under 5 still, like under 6, they're not quite at that stage yet of having defined jobs. And I'm curious about when we start doing that, at what point, because in my system, the way that I do things, because you've obviously heard, I have a really busy life and my children see me a lot. Yeah. It's not that I'm not here. I'm really present. I don't have a cleaner and I don't have a nanny. Okay. I have an exceptionally tidy, gorgeous home. So it's not posh, but it's really organized and it isn't chaotic. And so my kids know that we are like all, a team. That's really what I'm getting at. We're a team. And so I'm wondering, when do we start with children? If we do, because lots of people don't ever start with their kids, talking about who does what. When do you think is the right moment to do that? I mean, Joy? Oh, Evelini, you wanted to say something. I can tell.
That's okay. No, I think you guys are more expert than me in this matter.
Okay.
Because, I'm still learning because mine are only little. But I'm definitely starting slowly but surely. But I think you have better things to tell me with all the children.
Okay, so Joy.
Well, I was just going to say, so my friend Kate Kirsty, she wrote a book and it's called Me Time. And it was great because at that point, when I read the book, my kids so they're 9 and 10 now. So when I read the book was maybe the first version of it was a couple years ago before it went to a publisher. And it was really interesting because she said in the book, get your kids to do stuff. And my mom had said to me a couple times on the phone, like, hey, Joy, your kids are old enough to do stuff. And so probably about 2 years ago, I started when they were probably, I guess that would have been 7 and 8. I started saying, okay, let's start talking about the things that you can do. And really, I would say in the last year that's picked up. So they have to make their beds every day. They know that if they come down before everybody else, that we would really like them to empty the dishwasher. They clear the dishes. They put the dishes in the dishwasher. They set the table. And I think that really helps. I think knowing that as they get older, they can do more is really important, and letting go and letting them do more is really important. And I love what Rebekah said about disenfranchising the partner, because I remember when my kids were little, how many of my very close girlfriends were like, hands off to their partners. Like, I got this. And I was not that person. I was like, if he was around, the kids were in there, they were in his lap, like they need a nappy change, you can do it. They need a feed, you can do it. I mean, my husband, when they were, when I was doing the breastfeeding stuff, and then even when I was off breastfeeding and was bottle feeding, he always did the 10 o'clock PM feed. That was when he was home, that's what he did. And so he's always been involved, but I always allowed him to be. And I think it's the same thing with children. If you allow your children to take ownership over what they can do, you're empowering them and you're empowering yourself. And one thing that I did as well is, I am amazed, Danusha, that you don't have a cleaner or a nanny. But I think that speaks to you have very high organizational skills. You have very high kind of almost like corporate organizational skills, and that like superior corporate skills. I'm not like that at all. I'm a total creative. My desk, it looks pretty right now, but if I turn the camera around, you'll see a disaster. I am not like Evelini. I am not an initiative person in this. I will initiate a business in 2 seconds. I'll create a business online. I could build a website. I could launch it on social media. I could make a sale. But what I'm not great at is like, the kitchen needs cleaning or the living room needs cleaning. Let me just take the initiative to do that, because I'm so wiped out from working so hard. I have no ability to take the initiative. And that's actually what caused the problems in our house. And that's why I had to actually start really being clear about who owns what and who does what, because I didn't have the energy to initiate. And I think very often men who work full time and work 120 hours jobs, there were some weeks during the pandemic that I was working 90-hour weeks. I mean, the initiative to do anything besides work was very, very difficult for me. And I think that happens to men too who work full time. I don't think people fully appreciate what a 90-hour week does to someone's body and does to their energy levels. So one of the things that I've had to really work on is protecting my energy levels and trying to get more sleep and trying to be more attentive and really trying to stick to my values. But there's so many good nuggets here. I wish I had the initiative that Evelini has. That would be lovely.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I got this sorted, or I've been sorting it, because it's not as you said, Rebekah, it's never a static, hey, I've got it all done, that's me done. It never is, because things are always changing within ourselves, but also our families, is because I needed more space and energy. If I wasn't going to get so submerged and so lost in my family, and I haven't always been single, so I have the benefit of living with or living with a partner or being married. I've had really equitable, divided in terms of the chores relationships. I have never had a relationship with a man who hasn't willingly come or willingly come to the table to talk about this, or actually been at the forefront of it. So what I haven't had is necessarily someone that does the emotional stuff, like the piece around family politics at Christmas, all the stuff that is involved with schools, the PTA, the meetings about certain children, or even nursery meetings, all of that. So the behind the scenes, but things like the basics, food, laundry, hoovering, like cleaning. Yeah, I've always had that. Partly because I can't imagine trying to have a high impact career without. I couldn't. When people say to me, however do you do this? Well, I mean, if I had a messy home, I couldn't get out the house. So it isn't just the ownership, for me, it's a standard. It's like when people own a job, we've got to sort out what's the standard they're going to all own it to. That sounds really odd, but I have come across, not with my partners, but people that I know, friends who've got husbands that deliberately do things badly. It turns out they deliberately do it badly so that they don't need to own it. It's like, I do it so often. Oh, darling. Actually, my ex-husband did tell me that I did the dishwasher so badly that I ought to just leave it to him. I was like, yes, win. And I do pack it really badly, actually. But I have a teenager that does that badly. But so we talk about the standard. So I'm wondering if you talk about the standards of jobs? Do you let go standards? Do you let them go? Because lots of people let them go, you see.
So I think I would say, Danisha, if you just talking about my children first. So I think if you're going to empower children to do things, I think there has to be a minimum level of standard. And then there's this optional level. So like I said, it's basically like it cannot be on the floor. It can be in your cupboard with the door shut.
Nice.
So that's like, so I walk in the room and my mental health is fine because there's nothing on the floor. And so I think that's the thing, especially with kids. If you want to really empower them to do things, you have to be clear about what the minimum is, but be quite flexible about how they get to that, that space in between. So like, if my son doesn't bring his PE kit back all term, that means he's having every single lesson in the same PE kit, but he's the one having it, not me. Like no one's going to call me up and go, do you know?
Well, actually, but isn't that what stops a lot of mothers? Because they know that their children are turning up to their sports in the filthiest outfits possible. And then at some parents' evening, some lovely teacher might mention, you might want to wash that. And it generally might be approach. Yeah, it's directed at the mother. It probably won't be directed at the father, which is not good. So of course that's where we come into the guilt piece, isn't it? Where women, mothers particularly feel guilty for the standards that they're trying to uphold, but and it's really for other people. It's not for them. I realized I didn't talk about the children, by the way. My children, I've taught them from very early. So well before 5, and it's not about get up the chimney or scrub the oven. It's more, we have a place for our shoes. So you put your shoes in there. Yeah, that's what I mean. Can you put the tea towel back on its hook? So it's very age appropriate, little tiny tasks that show that the job of the house is not mummy's. And so I never say to my children, would you do X to help me, please, with the house? I never say, I need your help to do this. Oh, by the way, they know I'm perfectly capable of saying, I need your help. It's not that. It's that I never frame it as this is a job that mummy needs you to do for mummy. It's the living room needs hoovering. Would you do it? There's a difference than I need you to do the living room for me. There's quite a subtle difference. And so my children know from just the linguistics around it and never framed as, oh, I've got to do the house. Oh, my house, it's so untidy. I need the house. I never do. It's, oh, the place is a shit heap. I mean, actually, anyone that knows me in the group that's ever seen my home will laugh. What that probably means is there's a few cushions out of place. It's so pathetic on my part. But you see, it's all about our internal resilience for what we can live with. And so I worked out quite early that if I was to do the job that I'm doing in the world, and I mean, for years now, whether I was writing or whether I was, consulting, I have a very full head. And so if I'm going to be very present with them, I can't live in chaos. So I do tell them it is because mummy can't live in chaos. I can't live in that. And it's not either harmony or chaos. There's lots of shades, I do realize. But even when it gets into what other people wouldn't even dream that it's untidy, for me, and it may be sensory, by the way, I've worked that out. I just need more order. I'm a very ordered person. So I've taught them to be very orderly. They are. They just are.
I have to say, with regards to the children, mine, we already have like a shoe rack by the front door. So they already know where the shoes should go. But often, especially my son, my daughter, even though she's 2.5, she's so organized, you wouldn't believe it. So I think it won't be hard for her to like learn to do things. And like she helps me to empty the dishwasher with joy, or to put the clothes in the wash machine, things like this. For her, it's almost like fun. Whereas for my son, I can see it's a bit of a drag. So, and likewise, I know my husband doesn't like it. And since as a single man, he used to already pay to have a cleaner because he knew that he was a bit hopeless. And I have to say, with regards to standards, that's one thing that I have sometimes to bite my tongue because he does help, right? But don't expect perfection. So sometimes, occasionally, I might do the tidy up of his tidy up, So not every time he does it, obviously, but sometimes I'm tired, he's tired. So he's trying to exactly do his bit for the team. And then he does his way. And either I suck it up, or I obviously have to take over and do it. But I try to do it not in a hurtful way because I know it is a bit, annoying. You try your best in the way you can do. And then if somebody else comes and criticizes what you're already doing. But I totally get what Rebekah is saying. I should have a minimum standard, right? So, and, but I guess it's like this balance of a minimum standard with still being appreciative, even with that minimum standard for not to upset the other half or the children, even to prevent them from wanting to continue doing their bit, right? For the well-being of the household. Well, because nobody likes living in a messy house.
Well, there's a very big difference between a minimal standard and the mode by which you get there. So I actually don't mind how people get there. They can have their own method. It's just the standard. It's so it isn't. So I think that's one of the things. My way is not the right way. It's my way. I do it that way. Yeah. So I think sometimes when we get caught up in insisting something is done our way, then we trip up. We trip up because people don't want to do it that way. Whereas if we say, well, as long as the job's done, how you do it is up to you. I have children I have one young, fabulous teen who takes hours about things. And I'm like, what a waste of time. I mean, literally, it takes hours. I'm like, for me, I would zip around, do that in 20 minutes, and I'd get on with something else. But for her way, she has a much, her pace is very different. We're very different people. I love this young woman. For her pace, for the way that she does things in the world, she has a very different pace, and it's wonderful. So I have had to teach myself not to say, what do you mean you took 3 hours? Because in my world, that's absolutely insane. For her, though, it's not, because she's dancing, she's singing, she's enjoying herself in her method. So I think that's something that for me, I've had to learn to, not criticize, as you said, Evelini, because that's not helpful at all. Really isn't. We've had periods where we have regular family meetings, like weekly family meetings on a Sunday that sound terribly dull. They're not dull. They're really quite good fun. We go around I had 4 sons in 4 years. So these young boys, when they were like, I don't know, 7 up to 11, 10, whatever it was, we'd sit around, we'd say, right, And what would you like? What would make your week really good? What do you need? And no one else interjects. And then they say, and they're like, okay, and what's working and what isn't working? So we've tried all sorts of ways to give people in the house voice about, and I know, Rebekah, do you do this?
Exactly. We do weekly meetings on a Sunday when the kids come back from their dads. We sit down and we make a food plan for the week. Sounds incredibly boring, but actually just something. So basically the only way that I can have a corporate career, my partner can have a career, the kids can, survive is for us to be, to minimize decisions basically during the week. So my idea is basically during the week, there should be virtually no decisions I have to make about the house in any way, shape or form. So if we can get the laundry done at the weekend, we make a, meal plan on a Sunday, everyone gets to, make suggestions. Then, I like batch cook on a Sunday because I don't cook during the week. I'm a bit like Joy. I do not cook. So I'll make, shepherd's pie, bolognese, whatever it is, soups. I'll make those all at the weekends, but I'm not doing anything like that during the week. I absolutely, have made that decision. And as a family, it means that, my partner, if we want to have fresh food, like cook that day, he's the one who's doing it. I am not doing it. Otherwise, we're taking stuff out the freezer that I've already made, or we're buying ready-made food. Like that is just a decision that we've had to make. But I think that's the thing, Danisha. I think very often as well, as women, because of all this societal pressure put on us about being perfect to a degree, we then, create all these unnecessary decisions and responsibilities that layer on top of us. So, I have basically a rule that my kids cannot have, a new friendship or a new, a new activity that means that I'm going to have even less time than I have now.
Come on, tell us what you mean.
So basically, for example, my son is, he's going to be 15 in November. He loves sailing. And so, we can't take him every single Saturday and Sunday to sailing. It's a 45-minute, train journey there and back every, Saturdays and Sundays. So we said to him, you know what, you go to school by yourself. If you really want to do this, we've arranged for a parental responsibility, person there. If you want to do this, you have to go by yourself. We'll come, maybe every other week, once, twice a month. But if this is what you want, you have to take that responsibility. And, he then has to cycle in the rain, in the wind, whatever he has to do, then he gets on a train, then he cycles at the other side. That is his responsibility that he has taken to do that. I would never, ever let him sign up to sailing knowing that I was going to spend every single weekend. But I see lots of my friends doing that, making sure that their children have as fulfilling a life as possible. I mean, I look back to my own kind of, 70s childhood and think, wow, parents were very different back then.
Yeah, well, there's this whole thing about extracurricular activities. And I've got this, having been through this a few times with the children, by the time you get to triplets at the end of, after 7, I've done every violin lesson, every drum lesson, every French. I mean, you name it, we'll have tried it. And I don't know many adults, unless, of course, they're an Olympian and they showed great talent, or, like in my sphere as an ex-dancer, you did start at a young age and show obvious, huge talent. But I have most of my friends who've either, tried everything and they've also had their children go through everything. Not one of them actually still plays the violin as an adult. Very few of them actually still speak Spanish or whatever it is that their parents decided they really ought to do. They're not into archery. They're not into, and yeah, I get the picture that, it's so great to have all these skills that broaden us. I'm not so sure. I think it's a hiding to very little, not nothing, but very little. And I see lots and lots of mothers and quite a lot of fathers running around equipping their kids with these pre-COVID, they were. I think it's changed tremendously, hasn't it? Because there's this assumption that we've got to give our kids, I don't know, every opportunity to try every string to the bow. And I don't do that. I couldn't do what I was doing. So, I recommend all sorts of other ways of doing it, like OutSchool. There's some amazing classes on there. Or, finding creative ways to find another parent that you can share that. It's mostly the transport that's the problem, mostly, or the weekends. I don't want to be running around at the weekends because that's what my life's like. So what are you like on this, Joy?
Well, I probably am a little different than you, but I grew up in a family with just one sibling.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to do everything. I did a lot though. But my parents were really good at kind of, if I was interested in it, they supported me in doing it. If I wasn't interested in it, they could tell and they would pull me from it. So like, for example, apparently I didn't really love football. I would sit on the sidelines and color instead of actually running around. So my parents decided, well, football's not her thing. So I didn't really do football. But I loved dance, and I remember I danced for years. I started when I was 7, and I finished around the time I was 15 or 16. And I remember my mom just saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't drive you. You know, it was 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back, exactly what Rebekah's just saying. And I was at a level, I wasn't a really amazing dancer, but I was at a level where I was in Swan Lake and I had to be there every single day. And I remember a big argument with my mom, and she just pulled me from it. You know, it was like, I'm driving you here every single day to do this thing and you don't appreciate what I'm doing. So I'm pulling you. And it was devastating. I was absolutely devastated. And it pretty much ended my dancing career. And not that I had much of one, but, you know, and I remember kind of not long after that, we had some conversation in the car where I said, you know, something about like, why am I not doing dance anymore or whatever? And she said, oh, come on, Joy, let's face it. You were never going to be a prima ballerina, because I was always bigger than all the other girls, like, you know, physically bigger, muscularly bigger. And it's interesting how parents kind of know what their children should and shouldn't be doing. What I would say is I have a huge appreciation for ballet. I have a huge appreciation for modern dance because of the experience I had doing it. My mom also encouraged me to do the flute, and, you know, and I don't play the flute anymore, but ironically, my daughter, when she was 7, declared she wanted to play the flute. And so we got her a flute for her birthday. And then when COVID hit, you know, it came out that she really didn't like her flute teacher at school. And I said, well, why don't we just message my old flute teacher, who happens to be, he's a professional flautist, he's internationally recognized. Yeah. And I said, you know, you can learn on Zoom. So she's been training with him now for several months and absolutely fell in love with the flute. The teacher she had at school was horrible. And so the teacher she's got now, which is my old teacher from when I was her age, she's fallen in love with the flute. And, you know, and he's not cheap. He's a professional flautist. He's internationally recognized. But for me, it's a gift I can give her. And it is, I'm lucky we're in COVID. Yeah. She can do it on Zoom, you know, and one of her friends is doing it with her. I think in general, in our house, my husband is an Olympic gold medalist. His parents were there for everything, rain or shine, they were there. And of course, he only had one sibling as well. So I think it does matter in that case. And, you know, and so with us, I went away to California for a weekend or for a week in October last year. And I came back and my husband was the chair of the football team. He was the head of the you know, year, whatever, 4 or 5 football. And I was then the girls coach and the secretary of the club. So we're kind of an all-in family. And so now, you know, our Saturday mornings as an entire family are spent doing football matches, and then, you know, of course, I'm doing registration for the football club, and, you know, ask a busy person to do something if you want something done. That's how it kind of works in our house. But I think, you know, you have to find a balance somehow. But my opinion is, you know, really like Rebekah said, even if you can't be there, if you know it's something that they love and they have an initiative, you do want them to take that initiative, because you don't know if they're not, you know, you don't know if they're going to be the next Bill Gates or the next Steve Jobs or the next Olympic gold medalist, you know, and kids have to have that freedom to explore different things. And I guess what I'm saying is, if you are going to run a business, or if you are a single parent, or if there are a lot of children in your family, or if, you know, you have to just decide how you're going to do it and then work away to, you know, and I think there's a book called Everything is Figure Outable. And I just love that sentence, you know, everything is figure outable. If your kids really want to do something, you can figure it out, they can figure it out, and like in my house, my daughter now, she's keen on doing horseback riding and getting into horses. And I said to her, like, look, you got to come up with a business idea, and the profits from your business can pay for your horse stuff. So what did she do? She launched a t-shirt company for horses. And that's what we got it started in COVID, and now we've got to do the hard work and actually get it to make money. But if it makes money, then she can do what she wants with horses with that money. So I think it's teaching your kids it's not fishing for them, right? It's teaching them to fish. And I think that's really, really important, and being there for them and supporting them through it, but also recognizing you've got your limitations. And more importantly, and maybe you can speak to this, Danusha, too, and maybe Rebekah and Evelini, not losing yourself in the process. And I work.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing, because I agree with Marie Forleo that everything is figure outable, but not at the sacrifice of the mother. I think that's it. And so there has to be that getting to know yourself enough to know what is possible. There's always a line where it becomes a resented gift. And my children do loads of things. I just don't run around the place. I've made a choice that I will figure out things that are possible for them that don't take from me in a way that annihilates me. And that's the thing. So that's what I'm talking about. So, Serafina starting a podcast, I mean, I have the infrastructure. I have all of that. And when she wanted to do that, I was like, oh God, yeah. I mean, I have the booth. Just you can go in there, go do that. I have one that's set up a YouTube channel. I mean, he's off. He's doing that. I have one that's coding, but it's online. I searched for coding schools. There aren't any, and anyway, COVID would have made it impossible. But I have had, I've had very niche. Some niche interests that have, not myself, but my children, that have required me to drive hours and hours on a regular basis. And, I mean, my own childhood, I was the child. I was that child whose parents every single day, 6 days definitely out of 7, and that's how I got to the Royal Ballet, because I was a child whose parents did nothing but make sure that I could dance. And it wasn't good for them. And I am that child that had it. So I wouldn't want to repeat that actually for anybody. They didn't have any room for themselves at all. Not fair for them. So that is an extreme experience. And Joy, that, when you're training at such a high level, then it's extreme. So I think my perspective is not average around that, and nor is the amount of kids, but they have enormous amounts of interest that just don't mean that I lose myself. How do you keep yourself, Rebekah and Evelini, with the children and all of that you do?
Time off. Often I take one day during the week, or even on a weekday, nice. Go on a hike, go and meet up friends, and try to stay away from them, to also make them miss me and nice. To make them appreciate me. And isn't it? Because they need to be away from me to realize, yeah, actually, mommy's porridge is better than daddy's, or things funny. Like this. But it's taken me a while to learn it, because I was very hands-on, and I was very much wanting to make sure that I was present and there because they needed me. And then I realized, actually, no, they are good. They are clever children. They are okay without me. And obviously, they have a perfectly capable father. This weekend, we were going to go away, the two of us, for the first time, to a hotel to celebrate our anniversary. And we are going to leave them here with my sister-in-law and her partner. Unfortunately, because of the new rules in the Tier 2 here in London, I decided that it was inappropriate. So we canceled the whole thing off, because we are not taking you to our romantic getaway. So let's save the money to do it another time.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
But taking time off from the children and the husband, and still doing the occasional date when we can, when COVID allows us to. And time off. But I personally still enjoy going with my children to activities and things. But I'm with you a lot in terms of not overscheduling them. After all, they're only little, So my daughter only started football like a couple of weeks ago, and we're already thinking, is this her thing? Just like Joy's mom, that was like, I don't know if that was your thing, because she started really keen, and then suddenly the couple of following classes, she's already like sitting on the side. So we're like, should we continue this, or should we, be a bit more patient? It's early days, so we are going to persevere. But I think parents deep down know, right? So what children need and not. And I was actually going to ask you, Danusia, do you think your parents resent all what they've done for you in terms of all the runaround they've done? And that's why do you feel bad, or do you feel appreciative for all what they've done? Because sometimes I do certain things for my children and I can see them being a bit ungrateful. I mean, they say things where I know they're only little and they're still learning how to say things. But I'm like, I shouldn't be doing everything, because I don't want to resent in the future, and I don't want them to be just ungrateful. So how do you feel about your parents? Because it was very interesting you saying that you were that child that parents done everything for you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of supporting my interest in my very, I guess we'd call it a zone of genius now. But I mean, they certainly didn't do everything domestically. But how do I feel? I feel I was a very normal child. I feel I was very normal in that I didn't fully gauge the enormous commitment that both my parents gave to make sure that I could really follow at the level that I did, to follow that through and go. I mean, not just kind of in terms of time, it was finances, really, really had to find that. And so did they resent it? I think they were different. My mother took the lion's share, and I think that didn't help. She was left to it, but because I was so good, she couldn't let it go. I think it's easier when someone's not that kind of good at it. I think it's interesting, Joy, talking about being pretty good at something and then having it pulled. That's a really difficult decision. When they're awful at something, it's ever so easy. You just go, listen, love, you're not going to be a pianist. We're just going to let this go. Why don't you try X? And I've done that. Like, it's not your thing. But when somebody is really good, then when do you say, I have just had it with this? And so my parents didn't. And now as an adult, I can see what that took. I really can. And also because I've also got the benefit of raising teenagers who are consistently ungrateful. They're just consistently ungrateful. They just, they're not going to come to you and go, oh my goodness, I see what you're doing for me. Wow. They're gonna look elsewhere and go, look at what they've got. Wow, you don't give me that. So it's actually, and you might be waiting a while until, I'm now able to see this, but was I able to do that then? No, God, no. But I can use the learning that I've got to go, is that a good thing for me as a mother?
Danusia, I just want to clarify, I wasn't that good of a ballerina. So let's be clear. My mother listens to almost every podcast I ever do, guest or otherwise, and she will listen to that and she will say, hang on, Joy, you were not that good. So let's be clear. I was not that good, and she probably knew it, and I think she knew it. And she also thought, why am I driving this child to something that will not be her future? And in the end, it wasn't my future. I loved it. And I think sometimes kids can love something and they're not actually good at it either, and that's the tough one. That is
really tough, because then we have to look at what we need to. And I guess why we're discussing this isn't just because, our children are going to love to do lots of things. They're going to want to try a whole array of opportunities and things. And when we have to go, hang on, what do I do? How do I square away time for me? It's really difficult. It can be really difficult to do. So I've been spending some time putting together a resource pack around this subject. And one of the pieces is what we talked about right at the beginning, which is, how do you communicate with those around you? How do you communicate with your partner about, who does what? And then there's the whole domestic checklist of, well, actually, what is there in the house to do? So I've put that down as well. And in the resource guide, there's this 4 emails, because I used to live with a wonderful guy who was better to talk to by email. So we used to email avidly, all sorts of things. And he would engage in email. But if I tried to verbally, like, hey, could we talk about... No, didn't matter. It didn't matter what the soft start was. I didn't have to go in hard. Any start was a problem. That's why he's an ex. So, because you can't actually email somebody constantly. But I learned a huge amount by having a partner in a really deeply committed relationship who wanted to do this stuff, wanted a really equitable life together. But by email, realized that this was possible. I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had him in my life. So there's 4 exact scripts that you can tweak away at. And there's also lots of communication tips about how to do this. So it's quite a chunky document, actually. I didn't quite realize how big it was going to be when I started out. I thought it was going to be a 1-page cheat sheet. I think it's 20-something pages. So it's quite a chunky, it's a mini book basically for you. But I've loved this. I've absolutely loved it. And I'm deeply grateful to the 3 of you for coming on and sharing so openly about how you do things and what works, what isn't, and being at very different stages of things. It's lovely to have met you as well, Evelini. I'm really grateful. Yeah. So I hope this is being useful for everyone. And we'll do some more. We have some more roundtables coming up, and I'll announce them very soon. But thank you for your time. Lots of love. If you enjoyed this episode, and I really hope you did, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts, or email me on hello@schoolformothers.com. That's hello@schoolformothers.com. Well, that's all for now, listeners. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a fantastic week. And of course, stay safe. Sending you lots of love.
Thank you for tuning in to the School for Mothers podcast. To continue the conversation and keep your dose of inspiration up, head over to schoolformothers.com/podcast, where you'll find bonus content from Danusha and her guests on habits, recommendations, books, best apps, time-saving secrets, life hacks, health, sleep, and anything in between. That's schoolformothers.com/podcast.